In 1453, the Ottoman Empire stood at the peak of human power. They had just conquered Constantinople, the greatest city in the world, the city that had resisted every army for 1,000 years. They controlled 3 continents. Their sultan was 21 years old. Their army was undefeated. Their future looked infinite. So how does an empire like that end? Not quickly, not cleanly, not with one dramatic battle or one catastrophic defeat. The Ottoman Empire did not collapse like a wall being knocked down. It collapsed like a great tree slowly rotting from the inside, standing tall for decades while everything that made it strong quietly disappeared. It took 600 years to build, and it took about 150 years to fall apart. And when it finally ended, on November 1st, 1922, the last sultan of the Ottoman Empire slipped out of Constantinople in the dead of night on a British military ambulance. Alone. No army, no ceremony, no farewell. Just a man in the dark leaving the city his ancestors had conquered 469 years earlier. From the greatest empire on earth to a man sneaking away in an ambulance in the middle of the night. To understand the fall, you first need to understand what was falling. At its absolute peak in the 16th century under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottoman Empire was the most powerful state on earth. Full stop. No debate. Their territory stretched from the gates of Vienna in the west to the Persian Gulf in the east. From the Crimea in the north to the Sudan in the south. 5.2 million square miles. 3 continents. 30 million people under one administration. Their navy controlled the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea simultaneously. Their army, the most disciplined professional fighting force in the world, had never been defeated by a European power on land. Their capital, Constantinople, was the wealthiest city in the known world. Their legal system, the canon, was centuries ahead of anything in Europe. Their architecture produced the Blue Mosque, the Topkapi Palace, structures of breathtaking beauty and engineering. Suleiman himself was called the Magnificent by Europeans and the Lawgiver by his own people. He personally led 13 military campaigns. He conquered Hungary. He besieged Vienna. He controlled the trade routes between East and West. This is what was standing at the top. Now watch what happens to it. Every great empire depends on great leadership at the top. The early Ottomans had it consistently. Osman, Orhan, Murad, Bayezid, Mehmed, Selim, Suleiman, one after another, strong, capable, visionary sultans who personally led armies and made decisive decisions. Then something changed. After Suleiman died in 1566, on campaign, in his tent, aged 71, boots on, the quality of leadership at the top began a long, slow decline. Not immediately, not dramatically, but consistently. Here's why. The Ottomans had a system called the kafes, the cage. In the early empire, when a sultan died, his sons competed for the throne. The winner killed all his brothers to prevent future challenges. Brutal, but it produced battle-hardened, decisive rulers who had fought their way to the top. Then they changed the system. Instead of killing potential rivals, they locked them up. The kafes was a set of luxurious apartments inside the palace where princes lived, completely isolated from the outside world. No military experience, no administrative training, no contact with real life. Just servants, entertainers, and 4 walls. When a sultan died, whoever came out of the kafes became the next sultan. Imagine locking your future leaders in a golden room for 20 years and then expecting them to run the world's most complex empire. The results were exactly what you would expect. Some sultans came out of the kafes having lost touch with reality. Some were mentally unstable from years of isolation. Almost none had any real experience of governance or war. The empire that had been built by warrior statesmen who personally led armies was now being run by men who had spent their formative years in a palace apartment. The machine kept running, but nobody competent was at the controls. The Janissaries were the most elite military force in the world for over 2 centuries. Highly trained, fanatically disciplined, absolutely loyal to the Sultan. They were the reason the Ottoman army was undefeatable. And then they became the reason the Ottoman Empire could not reform fast enough to survive. The original Janissaries were taken as young boys from Christian families across the empire, a system called the Devshirme. They were converted to Islam, given the finest military training in the world, forbidden from marrying or having families, and devoted entirely to the Sultan's service. Their entire identity was the Ottoman military. This produced extraordinary soldiers, but it also produced something dangerous over time. As the centuries passed, the rules changed. Janissaries were allowed to marry. Their sons were allowed to join. What had been a meritocratic elite became a hereditary military class. Men who joined not because they were the best fighters selected from across the empire, but because their father was a janissary. The quality dropped. The attitude changed. The janissaries became less of an army and more of a political power block. They had the power to make and unmake sultans. They had overthrown weak rulers before. And now, whenever a sultan tried to modernize the military, bring in new weapons, new tactics, new training methods, the janissaries refused. Because modernization threatened their privileged position. The army that had made the Ottoman Empire unbeatable was now actively blocking the empire from adapting to survive. The very thing that had been its greatest strength became its greatest obstacle. Europe was modernizing its militaries rapidly. New weapons, new tactics, new organization. And every time the Ottomans tried to do the same, their own elite soldiers rose up and stopped them. For most of Ottoman history, Europe was behind. Behind in military technology, behind in organization, behind in firepower. The Ottoman army consistently defeated European forces because it was consistently better equipped and better trained. Then came the 17th and 18th centuries, and everything shifted. Europe went through a military revolution. New firearms, new artillery, new tactics based on disciplined musket formations, professional standing armies organized on modern lines. And most importantly, Europe began industrializing. Factories producing weapons and equipment at a scale and speed no pre-industrial empire could match. The Ottomans had gunpowder weapons too, but their military structure, frozen in place partly by the janissaries, could not adapt fast enough to keep up with the pace of European military development. The first truly shocking moment came in 1683, the Second Ottoman Siege of Vienna. A massive Ottoman army, one of the largest the empire ever assembled, besieged the Habsburg capital. For 2 months, it looked like Vienna might fall. Then a relief force arrived. Polish, German, and Austrian forces combined under Polish King Jan Sobieski launched one of the largest cavalry charges in history. The Ottoman army was routed. For the first time in their history, they retreated from a major European engagement, not because of a tactical mistake, but because the European force was genuinely superior on the battlefield. Vienna 1683 was the high watermark of Ottoman expansion into Europe. After that, the tide started going the other way. Over the next century and a half, territory began flowing back out of Ottoman hands. Hungary lost, the Balkans slowly slipping, Russia pushing south toward the Black Sea. The empire that had spent 3 centuries expanding was now spending the next 3 centuries contracting. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had a nickname in European diplomatic circles: the sick man of Europe. It was actually the Ottoman Sultan himself. Tsar Nicholas I of Russia reported that the Sultan used this phrase in a private diplomatic conversation in 1853. Whether the Sultan said it or the Tsar invented it, the name stuck. Because it was accurate. The empire was bleeding from every direction simultaneously. Greece fought for and won its independence in 1821, the first major piece of the empire to break away permanently. Serbia gained autonomy. Egypt became effectively independent under Muhammad Ali. Algeria was taken by France. Tunisia followed. The empire that had once seemed limitless was losing a piece of itself every decade. And the economy was collapsing. The empire had taken on enormous debts from European banks to finance wars and modernization attempts. By 1875, the Ottoman government defaulted on its debts. It literally could not pay back what it had borrowed. European creditors took control of Ottoman finances. The richest empire in the world 1 century earlier was now bankrupt and financially controlled by the European powers it had once dominated militarily. The sick man of Europe. An empire kept alive partly because the European powers could not agree on how to divide it up between themselves when it finally died. To be fair, the Ottomans did not simply watch their empire fall apart without trying to stop it. They tried. Repeatedly. Desperately. Sometimes brilliantly. Sultan Mahmud II, who ruled from 1808 to 1839, finally did what no previous sultan had managed. In 1826, he dissolved the janissaries by force. He surrounded their barracks with artillery and opened fire. The event was called the Auspicious Incident. It was brutal and it was necessary. The single biggest obstacle to military reform was removed in one violent morning. He then rebuilt the Ottoman military on modern European lines. New weapons, new training, new uniforms, new organization. His successors continued the reform project. The Tanzimat reforms of 1839 to 1876 attempted to modernize the entire Ottoman state. New legal codes, new schools, new infrastructure, new concepts of citizenship that extended equal rights regardless of religion. A constitution was drafted in 1876. A parliament was established. For a moment, it looked like the empire might genuinely transform itself and survive. Then Sultan Abdulhamid II suspended the constitution after 2 years and ruled as an autocrat for the next 30. The reforms slowed. The moment passed, and the empire continued bleeding. By 1914, the Ottoman Empire was already weakened, already shrinking, already in serious trouble. Then it made the decision that sealed its fate. It joined World War I on the side of Germany and Austria-Hungary. The men who made this decision were a group known as the Young Turks, specifically 3 men who had seized effective control of the government: Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Cemal Pasha. The 3 Pashas. They believed an alliance with Germany, the most powerful military force in Europe, would help the empire recover its lost territories and modernize rapidly under German guidance. They were catastrophically wrong. The Ottoman Empire entered the war fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously: against Russia in the Caucasus, against Britain in Mesopotamia and Palestine, against Arab forces that were, with British encouragement, actively rebelling against Ottoman rule. The campaigns were disasters. Enver Pasha personally led an army of 90,000 men into the Caucasus Mountains in winter to attack Russia. He came back with fewer than 18,000. The rest died, mostly from cold and disease, not even battle. The British campaign in Mesopotamia ultimately captured Baghdad in 1917. Palestine fell. The Arab revolt, led in part by the famous Lawrence of Arabia, tore apart the empire from within. And then Germany lost the war. The Ottoman Empire had gambled everything on the wrong side. When the armistice came in 1918, Ottoman forces had been driven out of Arabia, Palestine, Mesopotamia, and Syria. The empire had lost virtually all of its Arab territories in 4 years of catastrophic warfare. The victorious Allied powers, Britain, France, Greece, moved in to divide what remained. In 1920, the Allied powers presented the Ottoman government with the Treaty of Sèvres. It was not a peace treaty. It was an execution order. Under its terms, the Ottoman Empire would keep only a small rump of territory in central Anatolia. Constantinople itself would be placed under international control. Greece would get vast territories in western Anatolia, land that had been Turkish for 600 years. Armenia would get a large state in the east. France and Britain would control the Arab territories as mandates. Italy would get territory on the Mediterranean coast. Essentially, the Ottoman Empire would cease to exist as a meaningful state. The Sultan, weak, isolated, dependent on Allied military protection just to stay on his throne, signed it. But not everyone accepted it. While the Sultan in Constantinople was signing away what remained of the empire, a military commander in Anatolia was refusing to accept it. His name was Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, father of the Turks. He had been one of the few genuinely brilliant Ottoman military commanders of World War I, the man who had stopped the Allied forces at Gallipoli in 1915. He was decorated, celebrated, and deeply respected by the Turkish military. And when he saw the Treaty of Sèvres, he made a decision. He would fight, not for the Sultan, not for the empire, for something new, a Turkish nation-state, a republic, a country for the Turkish people carved out of the ruins of the Ottoman world. He organized resistance forces in Anatolia. He rallied what remained of the Ottoman military. He built a new government in Ankara, deliberately not in Constantinople, which was under Allied occupation. He declared that the Sultan's government, which had signed the humiliating treaty, no longer represented the Turkish people. What followed was the Turkish War of Independence, 1919 to 1923, for years of brutal fighting, against the Greeks who had landed in Izmir and were pushing deep into Anatolia, against Armenian forces in the east, against French forces in the south, against the entire post-war settlement that had tried to erase Turkey from the map. And Mustafa Kemal won. By 1922, his forces had driven the Greek army into the sea at Smyrna. The Allied powers, exhausted from World War I and unwilling to fight another war, negotiated. The Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 replaced the Treaty of Sèvres and recognized the new Turkish Republic within its current borders. Turkey had been saved, but the Ottoman Empire had not. On November 1st, 1922, the Grand National Assembly in Ankara, Mustafa Kemal's government, voted to abolish the Sultanate. The Ottoman Empire was officially over. The last sultan was Mehmed VI, the same name as the great conqueror who had taken Constantinople 469 years earlier. But where Mehmed II had ridden into Constantinople on horseback at the head of a conquering army, Mehmed VI left it in secret in the middle of the night. On November 17, 1922, he packed a few belongings. He walked out of the Dolmabahce Palace, the magnificent imperial palace on the Bosphorus where Ottoman sultans had lived for generations, and got into a British military ambulance. Not a royal carriage, not a warship with a guard of honor, a medical vehicle, so nobody would notice. The ambulance drove to a British warship waiting in the harbor. Mehmed VI boarded it. The warship sailed away. He never returned to Turkey. He died in exile in Italy 2 years later. 623 years after Osman founded his tiny tribe on the edge of Byzantine territory, the empire he started was gone. Not with a battle, not with a great final stand, with a man in an ambulance slipping away in the dark. Historians have debated this for a century, but when you look at everything, the honest answer is not one thing. It was everything at once. Leaders who were isolated from reality by a system designed to protect them. An elite military class that became so powerful it could block the very reforms needed to keep it relevant. An economy that borrowed to survive and eventually could not pay back what it owed. A world that was modernizing and industrializing faster than the empire could adapt. A catastrophic decision to join the wrong side of the most destructive war in human history to that point. Any one of these might have been survivable. Together they were not. But here is the thing that gets lost in the story of the fall. The Ottoman Empire lasted 623 years. It governed 3 continents. It produced extraordinary art, architecture, law, and culture. It gave the world one of the most sophisticated administrative systems of the pre-modern era. At its peak, it was genuinely the most powerful and most sophisticated state on earth. That is not nothing. That is one of the greatest achievements in human history. Every empire eventually falls. Rome fell. The Mongols fell. The British Empire fell. The Ottomans fell. What matters is not that they fell. What matters is what they built while they were standing. If you watched our first video on the rise of the Ottoman Empire, you just saw the complete story. From Osman's tiny camp in 1299 to Mehmed VI's ambulance in 1922. 623 years in 2 videos. If you have not seen the Rise video, it is linked right here. Watch it first. The fall hits completely differently when you know how high they climbed. Subscribe because this channel is just getting started. Islamic history runs deep and we are going all the way in. Drop a comment. Tell me what surprised you most about how the empire fell. I read every single one. See you in the next one.